Today's episode is a treat for anyone who's looking into the green space and in particularly solar. I have a chance to speak to Hunter and Hung today, who are co-founders of Detach Reset Solar. It was truly just a conversation about what it's like to found a company in this space, and more importantly, solve a problem that the industry as a whole in this space truly needs. It's one thing to install solar panels. It's another to look at the problem of maintenance. And that right there unlocked explosive growth to the point where the two had to start turning down business just to make sure they put their systems and processes in place to get to where they can capture those profits and continue to create impact and expand. And now they've got about a team of 80. So you know they're on the right track for growth. If this sounds familiar to you and you're facing this exact situation in terms of growth and trying to maintain it and service all that growth and demand, then this is a conversation you're going to want to listen to sort of borrow not only some companionship for the same challenges, but also be able to see how they're navigating that and what they're doing about it. And yeah, if you're in the solar space, obviously, it also makes sense to listen to what these two cats are doing because it's truly one of those situations and conversations where you can walk away from that understanding not only the important wheels that need to be spinning in terms of the business world, but also making sure that you're solving a real problem and what a difference that does to your business revenue. So without further ado, here is Detach Reset Solar with Hunter and Hung. For me, I think one of the most interesting things I found when I was preparing for this conversation was I saw, Hunter, that you had been in real estate, correct me if I'm wrong, prior to going in on a business. And I'd like to start there. Is this accurate?
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's actually how I met the gentleman right here, hung to the right of me. And I had no intentions of actually getting into the solar. I love real estate, and I fell in love with it probably I'm 30 now, so probably about 4 years ago, just buying properties, turning them into Airbnbs. Like, I love the entrepreneur lifestyle because I grew up and my parents were like, hey, go to college, hey, get a job. And I'm like, this isn't working out. Like, I've got to figure out something else. And that's where I started getting involved with education, real estate education. I said, hey, man, I want to be wealthy one day. And, I started watching, Grant Cardone and some mentors from afar. And it's like, hey, get around people that are doing what you're doing. And, I joined some real estate groups and I just fell in love with it and own many properties today. And I continue to use that as a side hustle. And, when I started the solar company, the only thing I wanted from the solar company was money to buy more real estate. So we didn't anticipate, growing so big so quickly. And it's just interesting how that worked out. And I'm sure you've heard many stories like that.
Yeah, right on. And
Yeah.
then, so Hung, you met Hunter while doing real estate as well, or how does that work out? I'd love to
Yeah, so
learn
we
this
were both.
dynamic.
So I was actually running a wholesale real estate company as well, and we were doing, fix and flips. We were doing wholesaling. We were doing a little bit of buy and hold here and there, but not too much. But yeah, how I met this guy was we were gonna buy his duplex. I was like, "Well,
Okay.
dude, you sound pretty cool. Let's go hang out in my office."
We literally just came in his office, just barged in and started hanging out. And then Hung's like, well, what do you do? Like, what do you do besides real estate? And I'm like, well, there's this interesting niche in solar that, nobody's taking advantage of, because what was happening is, there's these big solar companies. There was a huge rush of just all these install companies, and they're just like putting on thousands and thousands of systems. And I was in construction and I'm like, well, what happens when the roofs need replaced? What happens then? And so I came across this interesting niche. I'm like, oh yeah, I've been doing this on the side for a couple, roofing companies just for some cash to buy real estate. And he's like, no, man. He's like, this is $1 billion idea. And I'm like, really? And I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I'm like, yeah. And then, we started, he was the original founder, and then we kind of left for a period of time. But we basically came up with, realizing that thousands and thousands probably hundreds of thousands of systems are going to be needed to be taken off and put back on due to this wave of solar. And that's how we started the company, 3.5 years ago.
Yeah, it sounds like a little bit of red ocean, blue ocean, because you're right. There has been a saturation. I have a couple of friends who tried to step into it out here. I'm in Los Angeles, but they're in Pasadena, and whatever the case is, I don't ask them too much about it. I don't get a chance to talk to them often because in LA, when you're far apart, you might as well be in another country. But I have noticed that I have seen a lot of solar coming up in the conversation lately, and I love that you went red ocean, blue ocean, where you're like, well, while they're busy doing that, we're going to catch the undertow there and see how we can capitalize on that by solving a real problem, which is how a good business actually thrives, right? Like some people prop up a business model on something that isn't really an actual problem in the industry, but you're right. Somebody's going to need to service all that. And that's pretty peculiar that you decided to do that. So this is the napkin table conversation. You have that off. And is it just you two and then contractors, or did you start bringing on a team and you started talking about it? Where are you going to go? What did that look like? Did you raise money? Did you bootstrap it?
Yes, when we first started this thing, it was just me, him, and one other guy. And we actually didn't know how far this thing was going to go. Obviously, I was like, dude, this is $1 billion thing. Like, dude, we can grow this thing so crazy. And then I ended up not being able to get along with the other guy, so I left. So when I came back,
that happens.
Yeah. So when I came back this time around, we only had 7 people total in the company. It was including us, the sales guys, the contractors, everybody. It was 7 people total, and now we're sitting about, I think, 80.
80 employees.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's big, man. You're right there at mid-level company for sure. Wow, that's crazy. Okay. So yeah, I mean, once you get to that 100, someone told me that the team you start with isn't the same as the team you'll have when you're at 100 employees or so, right? And as you said before, you had a change in dynamic early on, and you got to have a no assholes policy if you're going to be grinding and spending as much time as it takes to build a business. So I'm glad you found a way to do that, because that always gets in the way, right? Where do you see the future then as this continues to grow? I'm actually kind of curious now, because growing a business to that level, having that level of payroll, then you're talking about overhead and what that looks like. Do you find that there are some challenges you're seeing that you're going to be working on in the future, or are things just kind of moving along swiftly and you're like, I don't know why, but it's kicking ass?
And that's a good point. I mean, there's definitely daily challenges when you're scaling at the level that we're scaling at. I mean, right now we're so busy in our different markets, like we're having to slow down the pace of scaling nationally. So, it was a little ego hit to me, in the last month or so, when I'm having to turn down work because we have to get our systems and processes and back end strong enough to handle, $3-4 million a month. Right now we're doing $2 million a month, and we're turning down hundreds of thousands of dollars of work right now. And I'm more the visionary in the company, like, hey, like, let's go do this, let's do that, like, let's jump on here, let's like hire a PR firm. And Hung, he makes sure the trains are running on time. He is one of the best operation managers I've ever talked to, an owner at my life. He's like, no, this needs to happen. There needs to be a system, this and this. And I'm like, no, let's just grow. Let's just do this. It's like, it's a really good combination to have, in a company.
Dude, it's impossible. Like I've spoken to, I think now a little over 2,200 entrepreneurs over the last couple of years, right? In this exact format. And having not only their business partner, but also their life partners, they've said that those are the best business decisions they ever made. Who they chose as the co-founder and who they chose as the co-founder at home. You know what I mean? Those dynamics ultimately determine whether or not their business will succeed, because those are the people you end up spending the most time with, and then the dynamic you have between each other, the transparency, the candor, or what have you, and the fact that they always give each other their respective lanes seems to be the secret sauce. Like whatever I don't handle that. And that I don't. You want my opinion on it? That's one thing, but I'm not handling that. That's you, and vice versa. Like, stay out of the lane. This is my spot, right? And it sounds, I mean, even from the jump when we started this conversation, I saw that. I saw that dynamic right off the bat, and I'm happy to see that that still holds true, because that's what it is here. It doesn't matter what business you're in. It's just true of operations and the team, right? So now let's actually get into your business a little bit. And where are you currently expanding to, or because I know you said you're holding the growth, but where are you currently focused on the most, and what should people know about that are in that area?
Sure. And yeah, great question. So our biggest markets right now are going to be Colorado, Texas, and Florida. And the reason why is because anywhere there's a lot of storm damage, like Colorado, Texas, huge hail states. Hail happens, for 4 or 5 months a year. I mean, I'm talking, some hail, this big, and it's just been a tremendous hail year. There's been a lot of catastrophic events happening, and in Florida, hurricanes. And anytime there's exterior damage to homes, well, guess what has to happen to the solar? It has to be taken off and put back on. And,
Wow.
that's why we're focusing on those markets, but they grew so fast. There's people in California, there's people in Illinois, a lot of Minnesota. We're getting calls from probably 40 different states for this trade because, like I was telling you before, just everybody focused on, the gold rush and new solar. And now they're like, oh, wait, all these things actually need maintenance, you're telling us. And nobody trained to have systems and processes for maintenance, because a new installation company is completely different from my company. Like, we don't do new installations. We don't sell new solar. We strictly repair and fix solar. So there's a giant demand for that. And, we created systems and processes with the help of Hung, so we have checklists on exactly what we need, because putting broken things back together, it can be a challenge. You know what I mean? So, that's
I
what we had to
love
do.
that, man. There's such a diversification in the way you saw yourself and what side of the market you were actually going to attack, right? You're 100% right. It's way easy to just tear off whatever was there and put on whatever and say, all right, you're good. And then the hard part comes in. It's like everybody wants to live by the beach till you start taking into consideration insurance and maintenance for the big house. So you're right, 100%. Nobody ever thinks that far. And I can imagine when there are few far and in between companies that are actually doing that, out of state calls, this and that. And now you're looking at, okay, how do we create the systems and processes necessary to actually go and service those markets? Because at this point, you're literally growing to just make sure you can serve them. And it just so happens to make crazy profits. But the fact is, like, you've shifted from, we want to start a business, to, okay, how do we make sure the business survives so we can keep serving people? How do you feel about that change? Because oftentimes that's the biggest hump, right? In business is, like, you may start off and you're like, I got to make a business move, I'm making money. And then at some point, something crazy happens and you start actually, like, serving people. And there's like this call of duty, if you will, to this. Have you started stepping into that?
Yeah, what's funny is because we were actually thinking about just how we can make profit in the beginning, like you were saying exactly that. We're just like, well, look, wintertime in Colorado, not so good, right? Snow, so we can't really get on roofs. So let's expand into other markets that you can actually work in wintertime, which is Florida and Texas, right? However, we actually had to pull back everyone from every single state. We had a traveling crew. We had all these things going on. We had to pull everybody back, is because we couldn't handle and service the workload that we are getting. So yes, I started then looking us into all those things. And you talked about manifestation earlier, and we actually were saying, like, dude, imagine the only problem we ever had was that we were lacking contractors. And we actually manifested that problem into reality. So
Yeah, man.
now we're just like, dude, how do we get retention going? How do we actually service the people, and how do we actually care for our people so that way they can continue working with us? And so that's why we started pulling.
And brings back to the point you said, like, the no assholes policy. Like, I don't know if you know who Sam Taggart is, but we're big on Sam Taggart's one of the best known sales training teams for the roofing and solar industry. And, he has something where he says, high culture, or low tolerance equals high culture, meaning don't put up with any, BS. Exactly like what you said. So, as soon as something happens, it's like, you're gone. That's it. We create a high tolerance for, or a low tolerance, excuse me.
No, yeah, no, I 100% know where you're coming
Yeah,
from. And what's interesting to me is as a company what you're doing in the market, because yes, there's a service, right? It's like someone who sells cardboard boxes. Like, yes, it's a business, but it solves a real problem. I can scarcely
yeah,
think of a time when I actually have cardboard boxes on hand. Like I don't keep them. So again, just by you being the company that you are as a team, and a team of 80, you're also propping up the business model of the people who are installing things to begin with. Because if nobody was there to repair them at all, eventually people would stop installing. So it's a truly interesting dynamic, and it's non-competitive. It's almost complementary in a sense. Have you
yeah.
have you found that to be true in your ecosystem?
It's 100% true. Like Tesla, we're getting some national recognition. I mean, Tesla has called us on the phone. Like they somehow got my personal
Wow.
cell phone number and they said, we see you guys all the time. And they're like, because Tesla, they're not familiar with running a division like this. It's very special. It's not like new installations. And they're like, yeah, we've checked you guys out and we're like extremely impressed and we want to offboard, a ton of work to you guys. Same thing with like some big suppliers like the COO of Solar Insure. They're the largest solar insurance company in the country, and they called us out of California, Southern California, and they're like, "Hey guys, we know what you're doing, and we have not found a company that's successful just doing maintenance on solar." And he said, "Can you guys take? I think it was 900 and something jobs," and we're just like,
Yeah, we have to turn on some big projects like Sun Power too. They're actually one of the biggest manufacturers. We have their contract in our inbox, but we're just like, man, we cannot take on like 2,000 jobs.
No, this is a good problem. Good problem in business. You know, um, I think there was a book, The E Myth by Michael Gerber, that talks about that. Like,
yeah,
no business, if it's a real business that's solving a real problem, can stay small forever, no matter how much the business owners want it to. It's just impossible.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
it's just the law of growth. And so it's really exciting to see and to get the chance to talk to you in this transition to a different level of company. And I love to hear that you have certain emphasis on culture and where you're borrowing from to implement it into your workplace. I guess really at the end of the day, if you know that you have entrepreneurs listening, and most of them do have to some degree a level of affluence, right? They're startups, they're raising capital, they probably own homes, not all, but some. They're in urban cities, maybe it's a little more cost prohibitive, but if they're living in suburban areas, what would you want them to know now that you have their attention and they see you move in as business owners and what you do, and you just happens to be solar repair, what do you want them to know about what you're doing and where they should be connecting with you?
Okay. In the urban areas.
Just in general, the fact is, right now, there could be an entrepreneur listening who raised some capital. They're doing whatever. They probably have a home and they're like, what am I doing? So now that you have their attention and they see the way you move and they respect, okay, these are business owners. So the question is, that's the person you have whose ear is listening to what you've been talking about lately right now. So what would you want them to know about your company specifically? And how do you want them to get a hold of you? Is there a preferred channel? Things of that nature.
Ah, okay, yeah, good question. I mean, yeah, we're all over. We actually, the name of our company is Detach Reset Solar, which is actually the insurance line item for taking off the solar and putting it back on. We own the trademark. If you type in our name, Detach Reset
Hey.
Solar, we have several pages of Google, on their interviews, podcasts. Our big, we're in the storm rest. We're the industry we're in is called, it's considered like the storm restoration industry or solar maintenance, because we're dealing with so many, issues with the, solar and the storm restoration business, hurricanes, hail, windstorms, stuff like that, that's getting, affecting the roof, which is affecting the solar.
Right on. Right
Just
on.
what you guys know is we help out everybody, right? From roofing companies to real estate agents to roofers are our main targets. But basically anybody that has to deal with solar, right? Like if a real estate agent doesn't know the panels working or not, we'll come in there and we'll help them out. What you mentioned earlier, solar companies, they just think that we're like the ugly duckling of their company. They don't want to do maintenance and stuff on their own panels. So they just give us the work too, right? So roofers, we actually help them out as well. So if you guys are in any of those industries, public adjusters as well, we'll just walk you through the process and make you guys, with your claims getting through faster.
Construction, a lot of issues, homeowners or, some of these entrepreneurs might have, solar panels on their house and they're like, hey man, I can't get a hold of Tesla. Hey, Tesla's 6 months out. Well, hey, give us a call. We're happy to help. Our timelines are a lot quicker because we're only focused on one thing, and that's, solar maintenance. And, that's what we're about here.
Man, I'm curious, did you go into developing like an app or anything to be called on, or is it all just like contact form on a website? What is that outreach looking like?
A couple things. We have a different phone number pretty much to track where our marketing is all coming from.
Yeah.
We have flyers, we have it from materials like pens and shirts, t-shirts.
Because that's always the trick, right? Especially because like a lot of homeowners may be older people who may not be as friendly with tech, right? And that's like presumably one of the things that like most companies that are in an advanced industry like solar may first go towards, but some of those people can't even remember their password, and understandably they come from a different time, right? How have you navigated that? And what are your views on how things move forward? Are you seeing a younger demographic coming in, reaching out to you?
So the demographics are typically younger, but no, we do have signs and stuff like the one you see up here. And just yesterday alone, that's one of these signs brought in 5 jobs.
Hey.
So I mean, we have both, right? We have the new tech stuff where we're actually like doing the website SEO and all that stuff, social media marketing and all that. But we also have a lot of physical stuff. So like we actually do events, we do booths. So like those are like where the older generation like to go. They like to shake hands and
keeping it old school. No, you know what? I had interviewed someone who was a fund. He ran a fund, a venture fund, somewhere out, I think it was Germany, Russia. And he was talking about how a lot of the people that he would fund would often sit there and go, oh, is this the right logo? Before they're even making a single dollar. Here you are running a whole business. You're like, yeah, we do flyers where we're more in person, where other people would overly focus on their tech stack before even hitting the market. And I just love to hear you like, look, at the end of the day, the tried and true still works. And honestly, we're turning business away. And not happily.
And I can tell you the big thing that we're big on. I don't know if you have ever read Russell Brunson Traffic Secrets.
Yeah. Whoa. Old school, yeah.
So one of our biggest tactics is coming up with the Dream 100. Like every entrepreneur has a Dream 100. Like who do they want to talk to on the list? Well, we went right after the biggest roofing influencer in the country. His name's TJ McCormick, and he actually happens to live in Denver. And I said, hey man, I invited him to a 5-star restaurant. I said, hey man, this is what we're doing. I'd love to get it out there. He made a couple posts. He has, several 100,000 followers, and he put our name out there. And just as a courtesy, we didn't even pay him. And he blasted it, and that's another, probably more modern technique that we like to use. But there's several, people that are big influencers in our industry, and it's drawn quite a bit of attention.
I'm glad you did that, man, because a lot of people may bulk at like, oh, yeah, influencer marketing or anything like that. And this just happened to be a conversation. Like you said, it just so happened to work out that way. But the truth is that often people will spend, I don't know, ungodly amounts of money on like local advertising only to not have it return anything. Whereas when you can leverage someone's trusted influence over a community, they already like and trust them. And he's like, I got to be honest with you, these guys are cool. They're hip and they're solving a real problem in the industry. Why wouldn't I promote them, right? There's just that coalescence, the way it's all come together for you. I'm actually really excited to see where you end up scaling to. I know I spoke to someone who just a couple days ago, he's going to have like his whole family on an Amazon Prime show or what have you. And for a while, he was installing something very similar to that in installations only to have I forget the name of the company, and I probably shouldn't be bringing it up anyways, but he said it on the podcast that basically they should have done a callback, a recall because of everything that happened, because people were only able to use like 20% of the actual power that was stored, and it turned into a whole thing. And so I know firsthand for a fact that the problem you're solving is real, like not just because of storm damage and what have you, but even faulty panels themselves. I'm sure you come across that a lot. We didn't even get a chance to cover that.
Well, look at the half the manufacturers that invented the equipment, they said, okay, well, solar's going to last 25 years, no problem. And now they're like, oh man, like even Panasonic pulling out of the game because they're like, man, the panels, they're not lasting as long as they're supposed to last. Like,
LG is pulling out, Tesla is pulling out. Like, there's a lot of guys. They didn't even think of decay on the panels, right? Like, they were like, oh yeah, it'll decay 10% over 20 years, but really they look at the decay factor and it was like, oh, it's 50% after 10. Like, oh shoot, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, that's a way different cost benefit analysis that wasn't even taken into consideration. Honestly, there's room for, you know, sort of proprietary development there, you know, that you could easily license. But you know, anyways, it's been real great chatting with you and having a genuine conversation about where your business is. I'm actually, like I said, truly excited, and I just want to make sure that we highlight this again. Where would you want the listeners who got a chance to check you guys out right now to connect with you? Is it like Instagram? Is it you want them to connect with you on the website, LinkedIn? Where do you want them to connect with you?
Yeah, Instagram and Facebook are huge for us at Detach Reset Solar.
Right on. Well, hey, look, honestly, it's been a pleasure, Hunter Hung, to just get a chance to chop it up with you guys. I wish you much success, and I can't thank you enough for stopping by.